And Anime Hangouts is live. Thank you guys for joining us. I'm Tinkun. This is OreAni. We're going to be talking to you guys about the end of 2014 summer season. Thank you, Michael, for joining us. So, going in order, like usual, we got the Shima Pond Master, Chris. We
Change my
got,
lower third so that just permanently.
we got Wild Jessica here. The Otaku Hime. We got our local pervert, Mike. I'm sorry, you're not local, but you're still pervert.
Thanks.
We got Niku. That's all I got. I'm sorry.
Success.
We got Sean with us today.
You don't need much more than Niku.
Triply, all the way from Europe. That's all you're going to give us? A head bob?
Guten Morgen.
Good Morgan.
It's 2 a.m., so I won't be too active today.
So, Nyampasu. Thank you, Triply, for joining us so late. This isn't our normal time, but
So
due
early.
to- yeah. So,
Hi.
once again, welcome to... Oh, I should have positioned that better. Welcome to OreAni. Today we're going to be talking about first is a... I don't know how to explain it. It's a nice show about trains, I guess.
At least
No,
so it
sir.
proclaims.
Yeah, so... Oh, wait, that's not the right title. Failure on my side. Okay, Rail Wars, yay!
Punchy, punchy, punchy.
Let's
I
look
love-
at it quickly.
This show has given me a reason to want to get into trains.
Has it really?
Yes, it has. I can see stuff like that all the time, man.
I don't know if that's an accurate portrayal of any nation's rail system. Just saying.
There's two Chris's?
I'm multiplying.
Well, since there's two of him, let's have him start this.
I'm doubling up on purpose. I really like this series. It was a lot of fun. I mean, it's you start watching it and you're like, okay, this is totally gonna be. My initial impression was going to be like another servant and service sort of deal where it's just they're working at their job. It's not going to be so much about the trains. It's going to be about the characters. And in a lot of ways, it actually came out that way. But all of the characters are quite busty. I would say the least well-endowed one is probably like a C cup. And so it started adopting a lot of nicknames, you know, like Plot Wars or Boob Wars. But the nice thing is that despite that, it just wound up. They didn't show it off. You know, they didn't really play that up. In fact, I was talking to Mike before we went live, and I said I think there's more in this series for like the hose and stocking fetishes than anything else. But seriously, the main character Takayama, he gets drafted into school. Apparently, the whole Japanese rail system is nationalized, and they go to this train facilities that it's all a individual company, whereas like something like this would be equivalent of like Pac Northwest or something like that in the States, but instead it's across the nation. He goes through there, and instead he wants to be a driver. Instead of going through the driver training or anything like that, the company said, okay, everybody in these classes, you're all public safety. So he winds up getting drafted into that force and, you know, encounters all of these, you know, attractive women, and, you know, it sort of sets up the harem situation. But the nice thing is, again, they don't really do that necessarily, and he's not overpowered or anything like that, unlike some of the other series. So it comes off really nice. It's an enjoyable series. I would endorse seeing it, even if you're not fond of the premise that there's going to be a lot of the upper tracts of land, if you will.
Well, since Chris brought him up, what did you say about it, Mike?
I agree with Chris 100%. When I first watched the series, I didn't know if I was going to like it because, I mean, it's Rail Wars. You expect it to be an anime about trains. How could that be any kind of interesting whatsoever? But then after a couple episodes, it actually starts to grow on you because the characters are likable, the characters really grow on you, and it's interesting. And to be perfectly honest, they do give you a lot of information about trains. Um, the information is always good, but it's just interesting and it's fun. And yes, the women in it are quite attractive, but you kind of don't even notice it. I mean, it's just one of those things. It just happens to be there. I know it's got a lot of bad nicknames, but I liked it. I watched every single episode and enjoyed every single one of them.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, it did have some like harem undertones, I would say. I mean, it was there, but it didn't try to heavily focus on it, which was nice. And while servants or service was abundant, it wasn't necessarily like we didn't really have a lot of over the top series this time around, so that was pretty nice. I gotta say, what I really took away from Rail Wars was actually around 2 episodes in particular. They introduced this one little mini train, if you will, where these guys had to do, insert heart-touching story here. But, never before have I attacked like a keyboard so hard to figure out if something actually existed or not. So I took most of their train knowledge just kind of like with a grain of salt because after Googling that little mini model, I don't think, at least there's not a lot of public internet information about it. I mean, I guess it could be out there actually somewhere in like a storehouse of some sort. No one cares about it, but I figured I'd at least dig something up if it was real. So I am a little concerned about some of the train information it tried to present, but I mean, I was along for the ride, and it was a fairly enjoyable series.
So, let's see here. Jessica, you quit it? Was it because of the plot? I can't hear her. Can anyone else?
Yeah, I have nothing going on from her end.
We can hear Tyler.
Tyler, stand under the mic or something.
Yeah, Tyler needs to be muted.
Oh no, Hangouts, I think we've been pocket dialed.
Yeah, we can't hear Jessica.
You can't hear her at all. Like, I'm not even getting any kind of ping just to show that she's talking.
Yeah, either am I.
Well,
Must be something like Nick's problem.
well, let's go with Shipley real quick while Jessica tries to fix that up.
Well, I have to disagree with Shimapan King and the local poet. I don't know. And I have to agree that some characters were likable, but most of them were like, well, not that likable. I've only watched it for Sakurai, but yeah, for anything else, it was rather bad. There was not much train information given for that time period we had. It was like, well, that train is like an electric train, and yeah, it has that much horsepower, or that is special about this train. Yeah, that was kind of it. I have to say, the show had amazing bad animation quality in general. A very amazing bad animation quality. I don't know how much budget I had, but the animation didn't get any of it, or the drawings at all. But I've liked that the proportions of the persons kind of grow with the perspective of the viewer. Like when they get near each other, the breasts kind of grow on them. It's what's kind of funny. Yeah, you don't have to watch it. It's one of the worst shows of the season, I think.
You know, since he brought it up, I have to say I agree with Shipley on the whole animation quality of it. I mean, that's actually one of the main reasons I watched the show, was because I wanted to see how bad it got. And, you know, all the way up to the last episode, it did not fail me. It was terrible. And I just wanted to share something with you guys real quick, like one scene right here. He's got his backpack strap on his right side as he's watching the train go by. And then they go to the next scene and his backpack's on his left side. And there's even moments where they would be talking and their mouths won't be moving. And it was just like, oh, this is awesome. How could they do this so bad?
There's definitely some inconsistencies to it. But it comes off as funny more than like, oh, this is a glaring defect. How can they I didn't really want to smack anyone around. I just wanted to chuckle a little bit and carry on with it because, like I said, a lot of the characters or everything were developing pretty smoothly. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, here's my backstory, and they're just like dump everything on you in like a 5-minute span. So I overlooked that a bit, I admit. But, from a technical point, definitely not the greatest animation we've seen out there. I have seen worse, though. It wasn't this season, but it was this year, so,
Mahoka?
Well,
no,
Barrett.
sorry.
There's one words there.
Yeah, Mahoka. That's so bad.
No, I just heard Maho came to my mind. What was that show again?
Why? It was not bad.
No,
Magical Warfare, right?
Yeah.
Well, actually, I think he's talking about Wizard Barrister's episode 11.
Yeah, he's talking about Magic Wars.
Yeah, that show is so terrible. I even made one of those stupid little Batman and Robin things.
Yeah, I remember that. And somebody got on that too. They were all like, "I don't understand what's so bad about this. It's good."
Jessica, are you back up?
No.
So.
Nope.
You gotta be rejoining, I think.
Here, let me mute you and unmute you and see if that works. Mute. Unmute.
No.
No. Oh, excuse me.
I do like Tyler's background noise. That was fun.
Well, how about Tyler? Tyler, what do you think of real one?
I'm experiencing technical difficulties of some sort. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
We can hear you.
We can hear you
All right,
better than we can hear Jessica.
Well, you gotta
I am.
clean your camera.
That was pretty bad.
So, real
Looks
one.
rather terrible, doesn't it? Rail Wars, it was a fun show. If you have 22 minutes, go ahead.
I can agree with that.
Yeah.
So far, the pervs are winning on this one.
I know.
But I would like to chime in again. We said it as a precursor, but you got to be in for a little bit of service.
A little bit?
I'm just saying, like as a precursor, like if you're not into service at all, don't pick up Rail Wars.
Okay.
But
Yes.
it doesn't have that much.
You guys like
Oh,
looking
it
at
does.
this?
No,
Like
it
looking
really
at this?
doesn't. I mean, it's not like a High School DxD or
Those are two different
Camphor
genres.
not
Well,
really.
the-
If you're
the-
if you're
the
considering
nice-
that it just if you're saying that it just has fan service, then it would be a High School DxD or a Camphor or
Camphor
something
maybe.
along
Camphor
that
closer,
line.
but DxD
But they're
was
not- they did
full-on
not-
blatant ATX special. It's complete,
Yes.
like, they were
High School
completely
DxD
focused on that.
was basically softcore porn.
Right, and that's not. How
But
are you
that's not
comparing it
real.
to Rail Wars?
It's
Yeah,
not. That's what I'm saying.
Right, but
Everybody
why'd you come up with that name?
That it has a lot of fan service when it truly doesn't. When
The
we
nice-
compare to quite a few other shows, it doesn't at all.
The nice thing about Rail Wars is they're basically like, yes, we like drawing our women cute and busty. Let's move on. And,
Exactly.
you know, they don't really show it off. They're just like, yep, they're busty, they're there, have fun, guys. You know, we'll leave the rest to your imagination. And that's what I was saying before is like, they really leave more out there throughout the series for the guys who are into like the stocking and hose fetish than anything else. Because I mean, legitimately, when you see them interacting and stuff, they're getting embarrassed about like showing off their legs or their skirt, or a few times in the scenes they've been taking off, and they're like, you know, like don't look. But they're not like draping their chest over each other, trying to show off and give a fan service that way. So yeah, with regards to service, like I said, the women are busty, they're there, but they don't really play it up. They're just like, yep, have fun, guys.
I mean, they don't portray the show as all about the fan service. It's more about the story and the characters that it just happens to have some fan service in it, which, to be perfectly honest, almost every anime does. So it's hard to compare it. It's hard to say that it's, for me at least, it's hard for me to say that it has a lot of fan service, because I've seen quite a few shows that do have a lot of fan service. So for me, this is just, it's really not that much. If you're not used to seeing anime, then yes, I can totally see someone saying that this has a lot of fan service. But anybody that has seen a decent amount should not consider this a lot of fan service, considering the shows that are out there that do have a lot of fan service. Especially even last season, where we did have, you know, Dragon R and other ones like that were pretty much almost nothing but fan service. You know, then you come to this one, and it's totally different. It's night and day how much that this one is more about the characters and the story versus other ones.
Actually, what really impressed upon me is that I had seen a couple clips where there were slightly different edits during a scene. Like, there's one where a character goes between another character's legs and, I guess, flips up her skirt briefly. And I've where they actually show it's actually there, but I went looking for like multiple sources. I'm like, okay, where's this coming from? I think I grabbed from 2 or 3 different groups. I didn't see it, so I don't know if that's something that's like a raw that nobody used or what. But you know, it was only a very few select scenes that I saw that were edited differently for like broadcast versus what we're actually seeing. So you know, I'm like, okay, that's not really that big of a deal. I mean, out of 12 episodes, if I can count on one hand, you know, the amount of changes they have to make, compared to something like, if you've seen a To Love Ru, it's like, oh, the white mist of censorship is like every other cut, you know? So it's, yeah, it's, like I said, it's there, but it's really not bad on the whole.
All right, just
I mean,
real quick.
I will fully admit it does have production issues, quite a few, and they are quite noticeable. But if you can get past that and just focus on the story and the characters, you're probably gonna like it.
All right, so Jessica.
Can you hear me now?
Oh yes,
We can hear you.
Yay! Basically, my thoughts on this show is that I would have to agree the fan service isn't that horrible, but what I didn't care for is that there was no dramatic tension. I think in an episode there's a bomb, and you know that the Scooby Gang is going to defuse it. There's no question in your mind that that's going to happen, and so that's what killed it for me. Is just there was no other way it could have gone down. So I thought it was a little boring, and that's why I dropped it.
That I can completely understand, and I completely agree with.
All right, so I think we wasted a little more time than we should have on this series. so, so let's go ahead and go to our next title, which
Well,
we got here Anda Noah Zero.
Called Noah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Alt Noah.
I just finished this today, so I was super shocked, even though I kind of heard a little bit of spoiler earlier for the week, but I did not expect what I saw. But let's go ahead and have you guys talk about it.
I think we should just sort of make sure that we're not talking about spoilers first, but then we have the spoiler discussion because some very big things happened in the last episode, especially.
Agreed. We can definitely make that cutoff.
It's gonna be tough.
but
There's
yeah,
so many
I mean-
moments on this that are like, oh my god, cliffhanger! Like my mind's gonna explode. And then the next episode, it's like, and then what's next?
Yeah, but I think we were pretty much like spot on with our early analysis of it. It really didn't upset. The battle scenes were very action filled. The music was still incredibly done all the way through, even if they did reuse most of it. But I mean, yeah, I was completely enticed in the story, and like every week I would just want more and more. Definitely some of the better music out of most other animations this season.
Yes. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it up until the end. That ending is not my favorite.
Oh, that was so good. But anyway, yeah,
yes.
spoilers for later.
The only thing I can say about that is, freaking Slain. It's, I'm not gonna say anything else. Just like you guys know what?
He was a non-committal little bugger all up to the very end, wasn't he? And then when he commits, it's like, what are you doing, kid?
Yeah, I guess I really just like a lot of the technical perspective this series had. You know, you see on our side of the war here, from the Earthlings' perspective, the heavy armored mechs going into war, being dropped like flies from the invading Martian superior technology, and you know, here we have our main protagonist who just basically dejects heavier armor, more advanced units for his slight bit of a slimmer, speedier build under quite literal explanation that armor's not going to help against these things, and he outwits every enemy. They rely on their gimmick too much, and he comes up with a solid strategy where, for whatever reason, a lot of the U.S. soldiers are only trained to point and shoot. So, I believe that's how like a lot of Army dynamics may work, but it was just an interesting project for the aspect of kind of being able to analyze the story and wondering chinks and critical weaknesses and.
So,
you know, just
are you going off the old adage of brain versus brawn?
I don't even necessarily think that's the case in a lot of the scenarios. I just think, like what he was saying, is that you got these different counts that land in their Martian castles. They've been given the gift of the Al-Noah, and they really. It's not that they're not smart or anything. They're brilliant in a lot of ways, but it's that scenario of overconfidence. It just becomes their undoing in a lot of scenarios.
Perhaps they are just relying too much on their superior technology and forgetting that it is tactics that wins the day.
A really odd choice for a character too, because at least most protagonists are very brash and warlike, but he's almost shut down in some ways. Is that he devises these very intricate Hail Mary type of strategies, and then when he manages to pull them off against all odds, he doesn't even crack a smile. And that's really unusual, is that most times you'd have characters saying, oh yes, I'm going to be the best mecha pilot either, or you'd have Lelouch, mwahahaing in the background, but not Inaho. And I don't know if I like that or not. It was just different.
I agree with the
No,
difference on that, especially because, typically you get a main character, he's either one of, like, 3 archetypes. He's either, like you said, the brash, like, I'm going to fight to become the best, or he's like the total gutless loser, thrown into like a Shinji type of thing, or they're completely overpowered. like they have that confidence. They know everything. They can do everything. They can win the day, and they don't even break a sweat. But this character is, like you said, tactful. He's resilient, but he's kind of emotionally shut down in a lot of ways, and it's like, where are you coming from?
I thought he was more down to earth than a lot of protagonists that we've had.
He was down to earth, but I think they're really playing off the fact, like, when in the very first episode, not too much of a spoiler here, when everyone's looking at the entourage of the princess proceeding down the line, and he's shopping for coupons on his phone instead of joining in for much of the conversation, and then when he sees that object pass in the background, he's just like, guys, I just saw something, probably should go or something.
And I guess maybe it's because it's so hard to tell what he's thinking. There's one episode where his sister says, "Oh yeah, he's so happy ever since meeting a Salem." I mean, I can tell because he's my brother, but I couldn't tell.
I think everyone else went.
I didn't pick that up at all. I was just, oh really?
I think that was like a comical ploy at the time, because I think the friends even joined in with a really.
Yeah.
Like he's happy.
Well, he's kind of like, to be perfectly honest, he almost reminded me of kind of like the, I guess you could say like the quiet intelligence. Mm-hmm. He may have some kind of developmental type of disorder, and that's why he was so shut down. But everything was fully firing up because he was obviously incredibly tactful and strategic, but very shut down. He might have had some kind of disability that it just wasn't portrayed or said in the show itself.
I'll tell you what's going on here. You're mostly used to seeing the Kudari character as a girl, and now that it's guy, it's just throwing everybody off.
Yeah, all of a sudden people are shouting autism, like, well, no, wait, it's like, wait a minute.
Well, I'm just saying that is the
no
possibility.
one blames Ray Ayanami for this shit. I mean, come on.
Because he didn't but see, that's the thing. He didn't really come across as, I'm just not interested because I'm just too cool. It was more like, I'm not interested because I'm just not, there's a subtle difference in how he was reacting to different things, and if you really pay attention, you can see it. So that's kind of what led me to that. Well, maybe he's just not all there, like in that capacity.
You know what this
maybe
discussion
he does have what?
Oh, sorry to interrupt you. This reminds me of the discussion when Gotchaman crowds with like you would start seeing posts about her being autistic and stuff, and you're like, it's like, really, guys? Like, come on.
I'm right there with you, and I wouldn't necessarily say that he's autistic, but I think they may have been trying to portray him as a different type of character, not necessarily a standard archetype, but someone who kind of breaks the mold. He's not what you would consider that type of person to be. It's probably the simple way of saying it.
I did like the summary that saying that he's more down to earth, and I'm like, I think his portrayal, despite being a little emotionally removed, I'm still going to say that's a little odd given his scenario. But being that he's more reasonable, down to earth, he's kind of relatable in that respect. So you're more inclined to put yourself in his shoes when stuff starts going down. You start thinking like, okay, well, I grew up with this sister in the military. I was kind of, I probably had a very kind of disciplined upbringing without it being, rigid structure, and so, it really frustrates her because she's like, why are you doing this? And he's like, well, I'm just, thinking my way out of the scenario, like you were saying I should do. And she's like, like, why don't you react more fervently to this, or, and he's like, well, this is war. She's in the military, and it feels like she kind of doesn't get what he gets. So, It was interesting that way. I think I like that character type, and I actually really want to see more of it.
Yeah, I really did like the character. I didn't find him off-putting. Like, I think that helped make the show, in all honesty.
I truly liked him. I thought he was one of the reasons why I kept watching it, was because I just wanted to see what he was going to do and how he was going to react to different things. He was a very likable character. He wasn't portrayed in a way that would make you just not like him.
Alright guys, just real quick because of time. Let's go ahead and talk about spoilers. So we can put a little note up here. We're going to be talking about spoilers, guys. Spoilers.
Okay, so
show was
spoiler
awesome.
time, right? Spoiler time, yeah. Everybody
Spoiler
die!
time.
Because I know everyone wants to talk about the end, and that's like the biggest thing.
Oh,
And fuck.
Fucking Slain.
ending.
Let's have
Give him
Triple A
time.
Sean lead us.
See
Triple
the
A
liked
train
it.
coming.
Okay, I'm on the side of I liked it, but I want no anime magic. Oh, those guys are still alive.
Oh yeah, let's
Oh,
hear
no,
what I like.
that, I'm going to be pissed
Okay.
off.
But you, like,
Right now, I'm
people
kind of
really
expecting that they're going to be alive somehow. Like
Mhm.
I think Inaho is going to be intensive care, and Slain carted off with the princess. She's alive. She's got if she's
Yeah,
dead, it's going to be really fucking creepy next season.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, they're talking about a second season. Well, you've just killed off all your main characters.
No,
How are
Slain
you
could be the
supposed
main
to have
character.
a second?
He got into the one robot, and it magically activated for him for some reason. We got to go back and explain that.
But
I-
the prince. I mean, you killed off the princess. If she's dead, you've pretty much killed your entire premise of your second season.
But they did that at the end of episode 9. That was the most shocking moment I have ever watched in any anime in the past couple of years. Is while it was happening, I was denying myself that it was happening, and she was just getting like in the shower at the end of episode 9. I was like, no, you're not doing. No way, no, really, no.
God,
See,
when
that's
that
the thing,
bird
like-
fell out of the sky, I was just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, you fucked up now. You fucked up.
And that's the thing. Like, that was her being that was her being choked, not a bullet to the head. You know.
Well, that's the thing. It's like normally when you see a shower scene like that, they'll have this like little like pseudo Yuri violent moment thing where like a harsh conversation takes place and they might beat on each other a little bit and they get interrupted. That's 90% of what was happening. So I was sitting there like kind of waiting to see like maybe it start slightly and then get interrupted right away, but it just kept going. I was like, no, what are you doing? And that shocked me far more than the last episode. The last episode, when they get to it, and like Sling just is like fuck everybody. I'm like, in a way, I kind of, I'm like, okay, like I didn't believe it, but I felt like I should have been more shocked that it was happening.
Yeah.
I guess if you just throw all those characters in a room, you just kind of know they're gonna screw each other. In the other scenarios, like okay, the I forget her name, the one character that winds up being the terrorist's daughter or whatever.
Right.
And, I'm like, okay, her position's kind of tenuous at best. Maybe she genuinely hates the Martians, but not so much the princess. And at first was kind of trained into this, but now that she's seen like the evils of the other Martians, she's kind of like, well, maybe she's more like an Earth princess kind of person, but then, like I said, she just, like, no speech, nothing. She just comes around the corner and just starts, like, choking her. I'm like, that, to me, just, like I said, is far more shocking in magnitude.
I agree. Yeah, that was quite interesting. But even that scene, I knew that it had to continue. Obviously, you had a few more episodes left, so they couldn't kill her off yet. But
I think they could have if they were winding, because it was episode 9. I'm like, the 3 final episodes, okay, some shit's about to go down, like big, and they could have ended it like episode 12, episode 13. I mean, there's a lot of series that do it that way. So after that, I'm like, I was in that whole pseudo like despair thing for all of like 5 minutes, and then somebody mentioned that they were following the VA on their Twitter account and just said, oh yeah, she's done voicing for the rest of the series. I'm like, Like, fucking thanks. You know, like,
She
really?
was done. She had all her footage already ready at that point.
Right.
Yeah,
but,
pretty much.
but still, it was like the acknowledgement of, like, oh, yeah, she's got at least 3 more episodes of material left. It's like, thanks. You know, like, that just put a huge damper on that moment for me. But like I said, that was still more shocking to me than just Slane fucking killing everybody.
You
Yeah,
know what? Oh, go ahead.
If either of those characters come back with fucking eye patches in the next, so mad. Because I want them to commit to that, because that's exciting. They killed their main
I
character.
wholeheartedly agree.
You know, Sean, I
when such
really
a good
wanted to see
character
it follow
dies,
through
you
too.
just don't want to be toyed with that way.
If you hear the
I will
monologue-
agree. If they're going to do a second season, they have to leave them dead. But how can you do a second season when you've killed off, like, okay, if you kill off the princess but leave the other guy, you've got a revenge angle. If you kill off the one guy and leave the princess, you've got different angles that she can do. When you kill them both off, you've got nothing.
Okay, well,
Yeah, you've just got slain.
Get slain, yeah.
And you
So when
have to like ascend some of the secondary characters into primary characters somehow, or introduce a new character. You know, it's like Game of Thrones. They do that all the time. They kill off some of the biggest characters, but then the secondary characters sort of ascend into the lead roles. So they could do that. I was really surprised that they killed the princess, though, because I thought her story was not finished, in the sense that she was like the outcast leader. But I wanted to see like how she would deal with being the leader that nobody wants. And would she try and like reclaim the throne? Would she try to like build some new identity, some new purpose for herself? But then she got shot in the head, so.
yeah, that's actually it too. I was loving that whole story as it was like unfolding, and it just felt like so like a car wreck, just grid to a stop, and you're just sitting there looking at the wreckage like I hope this is serious at this point. If you're gonna go this far, I don't want everyone's gonna be okay, but yeah, that was actually the ending. Probably really did shock me. I mean, I probably should have been braced for it, but I didn't care. I was along for the ride. I just didn't like. I guess I wanted to see that scene continue more than, just don't end it that way. It's like I like the chemistry of what was going on there, and then it just gets interrupted, and I was like, this isn't probably everyone else's view too, but I was actually. What shocked me the most about this series, and you might laugh at me, is I never thought that I would care for that little maid character, that Elder Rizzo chick or whatever. And the way she gets left behind, I just went, God damn it, how do I care about you now?
Yeah. No, I agree. She was a very likable character.
What about you, Jessica? Anything else to add?
No, I don't think so. I think we really touched on it, but I will reiterate that if they do end up bringing them back, I'm going to be very upset. They need to stay dead this time, because the princess got brought back, twice now? So...
Well, but they had legitimate reasons or excuses to bring her back. It was a body double or CPR.
Suspension of disbelief. So if they bring her back time number 3, then it's just silly.
Guys, don't you remember? She totally has optical camouflage. Gosh, she's not dead.
I really want to see.
Oh, what are you gonna say, Sean?
I really want to see how Slane, like, if he fills in for the princess, because he's got the Aldnoah power, right? Like that.
I'm guessing when she gave him CPR, like that shit just transfers over. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know, but somehow he has it because because they had that scene where he jumped in the robot. He's like, it's not starting up because I don't have the power, but then it starts up. So power.
I almost wondered that was the robot that got confiscated from the guy who was like torturing him, right? To reveal. Because I'm almost wondering, like, what if that guy is not truly dead and the robot kicked on because the other guy is still alive, and that's really all there is to it. He's still alive, so it activated, and he might be a viable character for a season 2.
Bring everyone back alive.
Doesn't he have to like go up to the thing and like
I don't know.
To activate
No,
it?
that's what they do to activate it initially, but usually they are just sitting in the cockpit, and either it's like idling or something, but usually like when they connect it as a power grid source or whatever, they're just simply in the cockpit. I'm sure it has a pass-through from there somehow. But, I mean, I couldn't tell you, but my guess is he didn't die.
I also liked Slane as a character, you know, even though he was really passive throughout the whole series, but he was in a really interesting... Because you don't know if he's just like #1 princess fan because of the princess, or that he could actually embody her ideals and sort of carry those out after her death. I want to see where Slane goes.
You know, I almost wonder if this was foreshadowed you know, when the princess came down with ideals of why the sky was blue, and then we have our physicist of the main character going, yeah, that's ray light scattering. It's not because of sheer overabundance. It's a physical concept. Your friend was wrong. But no, my friend said your friend was wrong.
What about you, Tripoli?
Well, actually, everything was said, but I really like to see Slane being the next main character. Just because he doesn't really fit in with the Martians and doesn't really fit in with the Terrans. And that is a really interesting concept because he's like a pirate going through space. Yeah.
We'll see, but if you have Slane as the next main character, the question is it going to be as good? Because you're not going to have two characters with really good chemistry anymore. You've lost the princess and you've lost the other guy. Where's your chemistry coming from? Where's your, you know, where's the conflict coming from? You know, all you've got is Slane.
Well, I mean,
Slane and the terrorist guy.
But again. So, I mean, if you look at the story from where season 1 ended, okay, what happened? They were trying to broadcast a signal to stop the Martian attack, but that was stopped in its tracks. That never escaped the realm of, oh, I have my accomplices hiding and taking care of that. So, in the grand scheme of things, the Martians are still attacking Earth, not knowing that the princess was ever alive. So they're probably still going to be attacking Earth in season 2, not knowing that any of that just happened. I mean, that's a viable standpoint of what will the Earth do to stop being attacked now that the princess is dead.
And we don't know if is the super bad guy dead? Is he really dead? Because he's not he's not shot through the head dead.
No, he's not shot through the head yet. He wanted to get shot through the head, but that didn't happen quite yet.
Yeah.
CPR. Everything is
But
alright.
he's sort of like, I got shot in the chest and I'm going to collapse
Yeah,
now.
he got shot a few times, and he wanted the final bullet to come, but that's when Slane noticed the main character crawling over the princess and went, I know what I'm going to use this bullet on.
Well, they did monologue at the very, very end that the princess was missing. So my little side chat joke was like, it'd be really creepy, but it'd be an interesting series if next season shows up and Slane's the main character and he's kind of doting on this corpse of the princess, like she actually died. But he has this infatuation.
No, Slane, I guess if he's going to be a main character, he's just fed up with the Martians' bullcrap at this point, and he's so upset that he's going to march on up there and overthrow the whole Martian government. That's like one of the only things I can see happening.
Yeah, totally.
I just can't see any kind of good plot or story with now that the other two people are dead. I'll still check it out when they do a second season, but I don't have high expectations.
It's not just for the music.
The music was awesome.
Yeah.
The music
Yeah.
in that show was
I did
superb.
like the alternating endings too, like they go between.
Yeah.
No, I didn't like
They
that.
had Calafina, Heavenly Blue for the op, and then they did Sawano, I think is Hiroyuki. She does a lot of stuff that gets basically Vocaloid twist on it, and they had Elise and
No, that's the name of the
Ida
song.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think of the ones for the endings.
No, those were the A and Z, and the Alize are the names of the two songs that they used. It wasn't like the artist. It was from the same artist.
Did
I
the
think
Kill
I
with
know.
Bill guy do the BGM? Do the background music?
He's the guy like that did Attack on Titan,
Oh, okay.
Guilty Crown, and I
What
think
film?
even
Or no?
huh?
Yeah.
I just have this vague recollection that the guy who did the music for Kill la Kill also did All No Zero.
Yeah, he also
No.
did Kill la Kill.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's all. That all sounds like anime that would have bombastic music.
Yep.
So
Actually,
let's.
actually, we didn't talk about the artwork or animations yet.
It's competent.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
it's
was
fine.
perfectly
There,
fine.
there wasn't any problem with the anime style or anything like that.
The story and characters are so intense.
I
that
don't know what you guys
we
are
didn't
talking
notice
about.
them.
I wasn't convinced with those blood splatter. That just wasn't realistic at all. Or blood splatter marks.
So, I can pretty much say that the show is good enough that we don't have to worry about the animation.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Or it pissed you off enough to where you don't want to complain about it.
let's go ahead and move
Depending
on
upon
to the
what you
next
like.
title. Go ahead and move on to the, what do you call this title here? Sankyo no
Sankyo no Terror.
Terror, yeah. Terror in Tokyo as they translate here.
You
I've
didn't
also
have
seen
to.
the translation is Terror in Resonance. So.
Yeah. I had the unfortunate thing of watching Anahazoro and then watching this right afterwards to finish.
I'm surprised you didn't shoot yourself.
Yeah, so I was really shocked with the two shows I watched back to back, so I'll let you guys go on with the talk.
Well, actually, you didn't have to delete. There's a spoiler warning, but.
Oh, are we going into spoilers now?
Actually, what really surprised me is I was talking to you, Sean, about this a little bit, and I thought you would like key into some like social commentary thing or
was
some
trying.
like political
I was
thing.
trying.
You know, I
trying to go
really
down
thought
that
you'd have
trying.
a lot of comments to that. And I remember you're just like, I got nothing. I'm like, what?
I was trying to find it, but I couldn't, and that's what I don't like about this show is that it has all this opportunity for like interesting commentary for interesting themes, but it doesn't go for it. It just sort of gets wrapped up in the mechanics of the plot and the cat and mouse game and all that stuff. And so the few moments where they do talk about themes, it just sort of feels sprinkled on. So I actually thought All Noah Zero was a much better show in terms of its themes because it had clear themes and those themes permeated throughout the story and the dialogue and even down to the mecha designs. Those were all expressing ideas. But Zankyo no Terror, I don't know. It's kind of strikes me as like a very superficial show. Like they wanted to do this genre. They wanted to make like a very Hollywood style of like cinematic type TV anime, and they achieved that, but the story wasn't all there. But yeah, I don't want to be such a downer.
I really thought the music was excellent. I thought the animation was quite lush for what it was. I think you even commented at one point doing like an episode review that you said you kind of had the impression that this was like Shinichiro's Watanabe's version of Death Note. Like, because there was a lot of things going on where the terrorist, almost every other episode, the terrorists would come on screen and say, "Hey guys, we got a riddle for you. If you don't figure it out, a bomb's gonna go off." And it was kind of neat like that, but an involvement with another character, Lisa gets involved with them, and they kind of play back and forth whether she's a hostage or an accomplice because she doesn't do much, and so you see her throughout the series trying to make herself useful. But yeah, there's a whole lot of other stuff going on with it. I really enjoyed the series. I didn't dial in to the characters anywhere near as much as I did with like Aldnoah or even Real Wars for that matter. So it's an enjoyable watch. You don't get too emotionally invested to it either. But it's like these guys say there is some moments where it's really dramatic. So that's something to watch out for.
Don't expect the best writing from this show because I don't know. I hope it's not just me, but I thought some of the things that the characters did were very stupid. Just that there
Yeah.
were moments where it's like, wait, why are they doing that? You know, other than to just sort of get themselves into trouble and create some
I can't really
drama and yeah.
account for why they were doing anything. I was just kind of along for its ride, and again, it was an enjoyable watch, I thought, especially towards the end. I was pretty intrigued as to what was going to happen in the resolution, but I mean, I guess it's just kind of hard to fathom these characters because they're supposed to be these like brain children, where they're the light Yagamis and the Kiras of their current society, and they've got this master plan or vision that they want to see happen, and they're almost locked onto it has to go this way. It's not like what's most practical; it's what's most symbolic to them. How can we get people to figure stuff out for themselves, or how can we get them to see from this perspective without just trying to straight up just go out on YouTube and be dismissed as like a schizophrenic. It's kind of like one of the detectives pointed out is they were some of the most unique terrorists in history because while they did operate very similarly to terrorists, they had a very moral overtone. So I think that's what they're going for. I mean, in what sense does terrorism is ever nice? When is terrorism a nice thing? When is it kind to people? When does it care about people? In this show, it does. So I think you're going to have a little bit of a conflict with a lot of the stuff they're going to do if you're expecting it to be a lot more straightforward.
Can we go into like spoiler territory now?
I wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
Okay, it's officially spoiler time starting right now. I think in sort of as a concept that like we're trying to blow the whistle on some like evil conspiracy, but like the media, the world, whatever, like people are not naturally interested enough unless we do something contrived to get their attention, which is
right.
Like steal an atomic bomb and blow it up over Tokyo. But like I didn't buy that premise because what the conspiracy that they were blowing the lid off of is so huge that you would just need to submit, like the right leaked documents to the right journalists, and then it would just be a media sensation that Japan is making clandestine nukes. That's huge. Like you don't need to do the whole terror campaign thing to get attention for that. Like that would be that's like an international scandal right there.
And in that aspect, it was more of a personal vengeance against the society that has done that to them. They weren't in it just to blow the whistle. They were in it to not only expose the story to the society, but also target the members who they were upset at, essentially. So it wasn't just about blowing the whistle. It was, justice shall be done through the heavens fall nuke.
I think some of it, though, has a lot to do with like the political structure and the traditionalism you'll see with a lot of Japanese stuff. We like to kind of joke about it a little bit in the U.S., whereas like stuff that is a truly big thing, like the whole Edward Snowden leaked documents and everything, and we're like, well, yeah, we kind of knew that for something like 20-odd years that the government was watching us, but like I think the Japanese is very traditional and stayed in a lot of their methodologies. So I think even an earlier commentary with Sean here, he's like, why didn't you just go to the right detective? And I think that's really not a possibility in their society. I think that, and it was kind of a downer for me because he was interviewing some of the guys that were like the culprits of this big mass, like exodus of all these orphans and, pumping them full of drugs and whatever. And they're like, are you sure you're ready for this? Well, like nothing ever came to fruition for them, against him. Like he wasn't attacked. You didn't see members of like some political group coming after him because they're all in their like 90s. They're probably all like dying of natural causes at this point. But when you go back to it and you think about it, a lot of the ways the Japanese present itself is that if you have something that is disruptive towards their current society, the way the older generation has set it up, trying to make waves with that, they will make you dis-a-freaking-peer. You know, we joke about it here, but over there, they're dead serious about that stuff. Like, if you try to disrupt what's going on, it doesn't happen. Like, you don't see it. And I think that's why they kind of went to the terrorist route.
No, I think you do have it, but also I think why their methods were so extreme is they wanted something to be done, not necessarily vengeance against, you know, the older, the the elder brass who pulled out this enactment, but I guess they wanted an infrastructure change is what they were going for. And essentially, I think from their perspective, if you don't mind me like trying to do some analogies here, is if the who they're held captive by and all these experiments were run on them from, if they went to the right detective and you know, submitted the right work and whatnot, if the story did get out at a mass media level, you know, that's something that hits the news and most people just go, oh, how horrible is that? And modern teenagers might not even care and they totally brush the story aside, but not a whole lot. You wouldn't have a whole lot of impact from that story. By going through this pseudo-terrorism route where, you know, people are scared, they're running for their lives, and then this story of why it happened hits, it's kind of like, you know, this organization was, you know, the dog, and he had an accident on the floor. Now you can either, you know, show the dog the accident, or you can like rub his face in it, and they're essentially rubbing his face in it right now because they want some form of change to happen. They just don't want people to go, oh, look at this story, you've got my support. They want a more drastic change.
I like
agree with that.
I like that story as a concept, but I'm still saying that the Japanese nukes, it's too big, and those kids are too smart. Like I have to believe that they could have found, they could have done the detective work just by themselves because they're so damn smart. You know, they could have hacked all the right databases or whatever and found all that stuff. And you know, they even stole the nuke. They have the goddamn nuke.
Yeah,
they do.
That is some possibility about that.
And you don't have to stay in Japan to get that attention. You could take that story to the New York Times or the Guardian or whoever, and it would still be like an international huge thing.
Yeah, it would be internationally huge, but without an incident, people would just be go, oh, how horrible is this? By causing an incident, you then escalate people's perspective, and they respond. Basically, like when you make them run for their lives, they respond.
Yeah, I agree with that because I think a lot of even, you know, worldwide society that we've revealed these horrible things that like especially in the States, they're like, oh, this company's doing this horrible thing and all these executives are getting away with all this stuff, and it's like they're not getting persecuted. I mean, people are saying, I hate them, I support, you know, like condemning their company or whatever, but in reality, you know, after saying all that, they go right in the store and keep on buying whatever goods they're producing, maybe not even consciously, because, you know, they're not really changing their behavior because it was reported in the news. If it's something that actually shows up, it actually happens to them, it actually affects them in their daily lives, which, I mean, that's what happens is they, you know, detonate the nuke way over the Tokyo. They black out almost the entire nation from all their electronic stuff, and it's like, you just threw them back in the Stone Age. I think somebody cares at this point.
You have my attention.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's so hard to kind of critique because it's like, you can say they could have found some way, but like without providing a suggestion, I guess you only have to go off of what the writer came up with, unless you wanted to submit your own like fanfic variant here. But they could have absolutely done something else.
I'm just saying that like drama is exciting when characters are pushed to do things that they don't want to do, but they're in a corner and they have to do it. But Zankyo no Terror, like the premise is not what well thought through. So it didn't achieve that for me. Like I was not convinced that this was the best plan and they had to do it.
Right.
More like they're being led to this plan by the writer because that's just, it seems more exciting if they did this instead of that. And the whole Japanese nukes thing is interesting because there is a sort of commentary there, but it's very shallow. Because there is this debate in Japan about whether we should change the constitution and we can have like an actual military and we can make defense treaties and whatnot with other nations. And it does sort of touch on that, like when what's his name, like Shimazaki or something. What's his name? Shibazaki.
Yeah, the detective was Shibazaki.
So when Shibazaki talks to the real ringleader of the whole thing, he's like this crusty old dude on his deathbed, and he says that I did this so that Japan would become independent. But that's sort of it. Like that theme is not really explored or expressed like throughout any of the rest of the show. It's just sort of tacked on there. So that's like exemplary of how I didn't like how Zankyo no Terror dealt with its themes. It didn't seem to really have any. Like it was more interested in just creating like exciting set pieces and cat and mouse, Death Note type games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that was kind of the letdown for me, is because that guy and the one guy before it was like Mamiya, and then there was a guy before that led him there. They were both like, "Are you sure you want to hear this? Like, this will put your life in jeopardy." And nothing happens. Like, you don't see him like as soon as he leaves their house, like he's being followed or any. He doesn't get assaulted or anything. There's basically no repercussions for him hearing these old men out by, saying like, hey, somebody's putting the screws to you. You might want to, come clean right here and now. And, they do, and that's it.
Yeah, the show is full of like these. I don't know whether you call them red herrings or not in this case, but it does seem to suggest things, but then they don't really capitalize on that.
It was certainly a disappointment considering the show's pedigree. Is that you have Shinichiro Watanabe and Yoko Kanno and the guy that does the artwork for Samurai Champloo.
Yeah,
so I
Nakazawa.
expected a lot more from it. And while I wouldn't say it's bad, I would have to agree is that thematically it's a mess. Mm-hmm. It doesn't really say anything. It's just the story and nothing below the surface.
Yeah.
It looked really good though.
Yeah, it did.
It looked like a David Fincher movie. It was so good looking, and the music was pretty good too.
The music was excellent.
Just like the presentation was just so well executed.
My favorite part from
because the writing did not really impress.
Yeah,
there would be these inconsistencies where Tokyo's a big effing city. And then the characters would just randomly show up next to another character and run into him and go, "Oh, hey, 9, I'm so glad I'm you." And it's just, what? How could that happen?
I wanted to hate 5 so bad, and then in the end, I was just like, nah, she's cool, I like her.
I didn't understand her motivations behind that, so if someone could enlighten me, I'd appreciate it. It just seemed to be one.
I don't think they ever really covered it. Inferiority complex, essentially.
It seemed like
that. Huh?
It seemed like she was just stringing the Americans along so that she could reunite with what number is it? 9?
9. Yeah, no. Yeah. She had an inferiority complex towards them. Like she could never just achieve the results that he did. And while he ran away, and she became the sole test subject, who then basically succeeded from the whole. Whatever the heck that was, she acknowledged the whole time that there was someone better than her, and she wanted to take him out. And she did string the Americans along, but it was all her personal game to get at this guy who she wanted to prove herself against, I guess.
There are a lot of strange, unexplained details related to the Americans. Like, for one thing, I can't believe that they were just so like bumbling and stupid, and they let this like teenager, however much of a prodigy that she is, just sort of lead the whole operation. lead like all the spec ops things. Man, So the Americans actually knew of the human enhancement program, like the what was it, like the Athena project or something?
Yeah, I think so. Sounds right.
But they didn't know about the nuke program. They just suspected, and they were trying to get the evidence, and so that's why they were chasing after 9 and 12, because they had the prototype nuke or whatever.
They didn't really explain it really well, but I think like 5, when they shut or something, she made it out somehow, obviously. But I think she went to the Americans and just went like, yeah, there's this academy, they're doing all these enhancement projects. I was pumped full of drugs, and now watch my IQ like just shatter your, greatest expectations. And I don't know how, like you said, like she's controlling all the spec ops people. It's like I can understand her being like liaison. Like when she first shows up with the American agent there with it, it's like, okay, I'm kind of buying that one. But then she's like sitting there and like telling the guy in the command center what to do, like really putting the screws to him. It's like, I'm not buying that so much.
In bad English too. This is really
it got better towards the end. The guy started like adopting. It was almost like a British accent. I'm like, no, that's not really an American, but that English is a little bit better than it had been. Because he actually switched. He went from Japanese to English, and the English during that piece was actually like better than any of the earlier episodes. I'm like, okay,
I wonder if that was the same voice actor. Like they had like an Australian guy who also spoke Japanese or something.
So Tripoli, what about you?
Well, actually, speculating about this anime is more interesting than the anime itself. But there are a few things I'm still thinking about, like Lisa. Why was Lisa in this anime at all?
Yeah.
But actually, when I speculate about how the end was going with 9, it was the reason that, for example, 9 kind of found a reason to, let's say, continue to live or to have fun. Not to be.
I think you mean 12.
Or 12, I don't know. These numbers are quite interesting, but confusing. But Lisa is just, I don't know. It's as if she wasn't important at all at some point. Well, she could be important, but she doesn't have to for the story at all. So.
No, like she wasn't an essential asset to the team, but I do think the story benefits from her existing as a character. Not that she helped it, just to provide some kind of, just an emotional back piece. I almost really couldn't imagine the show without her. It would take on a whole nother tone. I think they literally just included her for like just a to bring the tone down a little bit. Was probably her only purpose. I mean, one of my favorite scenes from this thing was when they were talking about doing the airline bombing, and she was all about to make some noodles, and she drops it all over the snowman, dame. And I just lost it at that point. The character was sold. I liked her from that point on. So.
What about you, Tyler? Did you watch this?
Yeah, I did. Like Sean said, earlier on, the writing just made the characters feel pretty much just like marionettes. Very early on, like I just couldn't or didn't want to get that much of a handle on them. And I think by the time that 5 showed up, it pretty much tanked the show for me because she was just drawn so unrealistically. So whatever human drama was behind them just didn't quite sell to me that much. But like everyone says, incredibly pretty to look at. Well-paced, well-directed, well-animated, great voice acting despite all the English. But, I just think by the end it fell flat.
See, one of the scenes that I didn't get, the scene that I disliked the most from this series is that whole Ferris wheel sequence where, they have the character rigged in the bombs and tell me the location of this thing and I will save you. And It's like at last possible second, and then I'm still half expecting like that whole Ferris wheel where just to blow up just cause. But
Yeah, and then they got away scot-free. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that they let them go.
yeah, like
Because even at the end of the show, they're like, oh, yeah, I guess we should shoot him. Like, why do you change your mind? You let him go in the first place.
Tension, drama.
I think if they redid that crucial point a lot differently, might have been in for a better show. But I mean, I did really enjoy it all the way through.
Just have 5 blow them up, and then it'd be all about 5 and 9.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next title. We could always talk more about this later on. Be sure to join our anime talk community. These guys posted about it. I bet we can have a pretty good discussion there. When we continue on with our next title, Gekkai Shoujo Nozaki-kun.
Gekkan Shoujo Nozaki-kun.
What? Yeah. So this was very, very different from the last 2 titles we've watched. So. Start with Tyler. He hasn't been talking much.
I kind of halfway watched this one. This one, I probably not kind of fair because I put it down as a watch, and it was kind of like more or less a half watch. It was more or less something that was on. A lot of people really loved it. I mean, I could see it on my G Plus stream every Monday and Tuesday that people were just going up in arms over it. But I never really got quite a hold of the characters. It felt like another romance tease, to where the romance tease was front and center, and that's better in the background, and it's not good at all, really, when you get right down to it. So, yeah.
Well, the thing I got from this show, and the reason why I enjoyed it so much, is like, it seemed like every episode they had like, does this really happen in anime or manga? And then they test it out and see how it goes, or how does this particular thing work? And of course it doesn't. They make it seem like, oh, it doesn't really happen this way in real life.
Yeah.
And I found that very funny.
And it's like they were almost doing that in a mini arc too, because like in the first few episodes they were testing out all the plots, and then kind of in the last half in that arc, you kind of see who he has developed and based characters off of, and how he attempts to progress his story based on how the actual characters are interacting with each other. So, I mean, there's tons of levels of what this show tries to, I guess, show you, but it's hard to explain why it's just so good, in my opinion. It's just a nice, easy watch. I appreciated everything that they did, and I would love to see more. One of the things that I actually personally, since I'm the opening ending fan, as I call it, I was kind of almost upset that halfway through this whole series I finally figured out what that whole like tanuki thing in the opening was. Then it made sense, and I was like, you needed to do this sooner, because I was wondering for a good while what the heck was going on in that opening.
What makes this show so great too is the way Nozaki translates his friends. Is that there's the I can't remember his name, but the red-haired character, the boy.
Mikoshiba, I think.
Yes, is that he's the standoffish girl in his manga.
Mm-hmm.
And then Kashima, the kind of prince character female, he translates as a male prince in the manga. And none of the characters really fall into the stereotypical male-female roles, is that Seo is not at all feminine, to the point where there's another character that doesn't believe that she can sing really well, because having a gorgeous voice come out of that brash, obnoxious girl just wouldn't make any sense at all. And this show made me laugh every episode, and I'm not one to laugh out loud while watching something, but it had me in stitches. It's just one of the funnier shows I've seen in some time.
I thought this was highly entertaining, and just like Jessica was saying, is that you get in there and you see it and you're thinking like, oh, he's quiet and Nozaki is just he's really quiet and you don't expect him to do much, and then as it turns out, he's sitting there studying, and you think like, oh, he really understands women. It's like, no, he's just applying his friends, which are all guys, like personalities, onto these female characters for his manga, and it's supposedly quite popular, and it's just hilarious to see a lot of that progress, especially with the Lorelei character. I love the position that she was in, where the one friend, I forget his name, was just like, he's like, I hate her, I'm gonna have a bad time, and she actually kind of likes him, which is maybe even funnier, because he's like, oh no, I don't like you. This person with this heavenly voice, I like her, not you. And it's like, well, wait, they're the same person, and he doesn't know it. And so throughout the whole series, you see that play off of it, where he's like, oh, I could get sleep with her voice, and oh crap, she's here.
I 100% agree with you. This show made me laugh every episode, especially Sakura. Her expressions made the entire show for me. Like the scene where she asks him, well, what do you do when you can't find someone to model your characters? And it shows all the different Suzaki-kuns, and she's like, they're all the same guy. And then it shows a scene where he says, Mamiko, pick one of us, and she's like, what does it matter? Stuff like that. Her expressions and how she interacts with him and the other characters truly made the entire show. I love the fact that they didn't just show the manga characters, they gave them their own voice actors. Yes. So you had a person that played Suzaki-kun, you had a person that played Mamiko, and so when they would do the kind of things where she was reading the manga or he was explaining something, it was in their own voices, and that brought everything together and everything to life for me.
I had a suspicion that Nozaki based Mamiko off of Chiyo, because in the last episode they have a flashback to where she first runs into them, and she has Mamiko's hairstyle. Her hair's identical. So I have to wonder if he pulled her as a model for that character.
I think he pulled the physical model, but you can definitely see how he pulled the other guy as the heroine.
Yeah, no, the physical model was Chiyo, I think.
Definitely Chiyo. And I said, like, that's the other scene, like, where, she asks, oh, so he's a character. Well, which character is he? She's flipping through. He goes, oh, he's the heroine. And she's like, what? And then she reads some of the lines, like, oh, okay, I can see it.
Yeah, that's one aspect of the show that I really enjoyed too, is how much of like manga production side of things they showed. Even if it was a tad bit unrealistic, but I didn't care. It was interesting to see like these students stringing together to like produce this like official production under this one dude's name, and they're all like still in high school.
Oh yeah.
I think that aspect appealed to me like the most. Is we are officially serializing something like it's no big deal. I mean, they do take it as a big deal in the series, but it's almost like an after-school activity is kind of what it seems like at some points.
And they all don't know each other, then eventually they kind of learn, oh, that's the person that does the backgrounds. That's the person that does the coloring.
Yeah, like one of my favorite scenes is when when he was lying sick in bed and they had to kind of come up with like their own screen toning, and then he looked at that manuscript and he's like, I'm going to need an extension.
It was all the words, because they went up to him and asked him, so what does this scene represent? And he starts going into some long dialogue of, well, she's saying this or she's thinking this, and then it comes out as just Suzaki-kun, Suzaki-kun, Suzaki-kun.
No, it comes out that way, but then when they looked overly critical at the characters the characters themselves are based off of, and then since they know them, they're like, okay, I know this person, let's pick the best screen tone that fits the real life actor's energy, and not like the scene energy. So they nail the characters spot on, but when you look at it from a shoujo manga perspective, it's like, what the crap were you guys smoking?
And it was interesting how they the artist or the manga creator he's like portrayed as the person who understands the female heart the most. And then she sees him in real life. It's like, how the hell does this guy know anything about women? And he's like, well, I know plenty about women, but I've never been on a date. And then, it kind of reminds me of the scene in As Good as It Gets, where they ask the Jack Nicholson guy, well, how do you portray women's hearts, feeling so well? And he says, I strip away all logic and reason and everything like that, and that's what I come up with. It reminds me of that. Like, you wouldn't expect this person to know anything, and yet he's known as one of the best, creators of this story.
Right, but it's all an illusion because he just knows the tropes really well. And then in the episodes, they try out these tropes and they realize that it's really stupid.
Yeah, and like it's so funny how everyone misunderstands him. Like this dude needs his references too. It's like everyone was surprised why he was looking forward to like Valentine's Day, and he's going around with his camera just getting all the material he can. And they're like, "So how much candy you score? Oh, what candy? What? Why do you like Valentine's Day?"
I like the episode where Sakura and him go shopping, and then he picks out they're picking out the clothes, and then he picks out the sailor uniform, and he's like, "Here, wear this." She's like, "Why do you want me to wear this?" He's like, "Do you mind if I take pictures?"
It won't fit on me. I tried.
And then he tries it on himself.
Oh god! And then he goes out of the dressing room like this. I had a fit. Like him trying so hard really made it very, very funny. Just seeing the reactions between him and all the other characters, especially Sakura, just made it. They melded so well together. I thought it was great. I loved it. It is one of my favorite shows this entire season.
Yeah, and while the music wasn't as great as I'll Know a Zero, it was perfectly placed. That lighthearted bump, 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 bump came across perfectly every time.
I really did. I loved the opening. I thought the opening fit that
ending is interesting perfectly. Too. I love that ending is so interesting. It's so simplistic but so interesting.
It really was. It showed, that even though this was a funny anime, it still has an underlying kind of tender, warm feeling to it. They weren't just going for the cheap laughs.
Mm. One of my favorite scenes was he was kind of gathering some of his people together, and then it was like a terrible rainstorm, and then they all get stuck there at his house. And he's like, I need to plan a scene for a slumber party. And you wonder if it was like, you wonder at that point, was that intentional? Like, did he plan to get everybody stuck there deliberately? Because then all of a sudden he just starts setting everything up. And he's like, okay, you guys do girl talk. And they're like, what? I'm like, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go to sleep. And he's like, no, I need this. And then he falls asleep himself.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the that was towards the end. I think it was the last couple of episodes.
Yeah. Well, you also reminded me about the he said like, oh, there needs to be like 3 Valentine's Days or something like that, and then the girls next to it were like, then there'd have to be 3 White Days, and then he sat there, thought for a moment, he's like, White Day really sucks. He's like, no, White Day doesn't need to exist. And
like in the sheer contrast of like in the sheer contrast of like merchandising schemes of like how pretty the packaging is and everything, he's just all bummed that White Day is not as focused and
yeah, and like the scene where the redheaded guy stays the night and they're playing the gal game.
Oh my god!
And he's like,
forget about that, but that was great.
He puts Suzaki-kun's name, and he's like being mean to all the girls, and the guy's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, Suzaki-kun only has eyes for Mamiko." And he's like, "Well, then why did you put that name?"
The resolution to that episode probably made me laugh the hardest out of this entire series. Just how that thing ended, I could not.
That where Sakura comes in and goes, "What the hell did you guys do?" And then she picks up the the manga that they drew and is like, "No, seriously, what
The
the
little
hell
fanfic.
did you guys do?" And they were, oh god,
I
this
think I'd
scene
like me to
where
plaque that episode somewhere.
oh
Just be like,
god, yes.
This is an episode that everybody just needs to
Everybody
see.
has to watch that, especially
You don't have to watch the whole series.
anybody.
Just watch this episode.
Anybody that has played Gal games definitely needs to watch that because just seeing him like oh well I have to pick, I'll pick this one because I know that girls like this, and then the girl's like, oh, that's pretty petty of you, and he's like, what the heck?
Yeah, he's putting serious legit thought into it, and then he's always getting the bland bad choice responses, and he's like, oh.
Mm-hmm. Oh god, that anime is a must-see for this past season. If you haven't watched it, you have to see it. It's so hysterically funny.
It's
So what about you,
unique.
Sean?
It's unique.
It's great. I actually watched it on your recommendation because in our beginning of the season hangouts, you were just preaching the. It seemed like you were the only one who was watching this. But
I was just drinking soda. I was just gonna say I really liked it a lot from the start.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I just
me too.
remember Tenkun said it was the best thing
Yeah.
on, or the best thing of the season so far. And yeah, it was really, really, really good for a comedy. It kind of reminded me of Oran Host Club, because that also happened to be a shoujo manga trope parody. But Nozaki-kun was interesting because it had that it had the constant contrast between, how do I put it? It's the way we want to see the world and then the way it really is. So it's stereotype versus actuality, and it was really fun to see that contrast. Whether it was the stereotypes that make up the tropes of shoujo manga, or just how we preconceive someone of a certain gender. There were constant moments where those shattered. When you see all these tall, kind of handsome boys, but they're all just huddled in a corner, just looking at their shoujo manga and discussing the fine pointers, and someone would walk in on that and be like, "What is going on here? I didn't know they were into that." And
yeah,
that's
very
basically
much.
the entire show.
What about you, Triple?
Well, what I thought was very interesting is that Sakura-san, or Shio-san, said in one of the last episodes, well, I think I now understand Nozaki-kun. And then San, well, I don't. And that was surprisingly the most fitting comment for that show at all. I don't understand what's going on, but it's hilarious and nice and good.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on to our next title. As everyone has said, highly recommended show, especially for comedy. So our next title we got, surprisingly, is Sword Art Online 2.
The most overhyped series of this entire probably year.
Agreed.
It's probably, you can skip the first 8 episodes, but then it gets awesome.
It's not bad. I mean, I liked it. It was probably, if everybody who had watched season with the first and second arcs, it probably lays somewhere between the two. The first arc was really extreme. Everybody absolutely adored that, and that's where a lot of the hype for the entire series comes from. And then the second arc, I know a lot of people were let down by it. I was okay with it. I think it resolved a lot of things, and that's why I was fine with it. But you get to Sword Art Online 2, which is also, I think, in the light novels, Gun Gale Online, is Kirito goes into a new section, kind of the internal affairs guys that you see at the end of season 1 or even in the OAVs. Comes back and says, I have a little project for you. Can you help me get some feedback on this? And it goes, I think, somewhere in between. The problem is that I think is that the main female protagonist in Gun Gale is somebody you could actually really see Kirito connecting with and everything like that and getting together. But he's already got Asuna, so either you're compelled to either have them break up or
Well,
real quick, just real quick.
Hang on a second.
Wait, Nick. I just kind of wanted to mention real quick though. The last episode isn't out, right?
That's what I was gonna say. I'm like, it's not over.
Well, I was just wrapping up and saying, like, from what's been going on so far in the series, is that Shion is the main female protagonist, and it's like that's somebody who, their interactions, you can kind of see them connecting, but you feel compelled to reject that idea because of what happened in first season. He's already got Asuna, so do you say, hook up with the new girl, which everybody knows Kirito's the harem master, or stick to his guns, say, okay, here's my girl, here's Asuna. So you don't know that yet. It's still going on, but like I said, it's not bad. It's pretty good. If you like the first stuff, you're going to enjoy this. But it's way, way overhyped.
I can't honestly really say what my take on the animation is, because while I enjoyed SAO2, and I do actually know how it's going to resolve, I just got to say, I really appreciate this author style of writing. I incorporated the concepts into this VR technology, which we're just kind of beginning to get into an entry stage to, like nowadays. We don't really have like sense diving and all that stuff, but this is a perfect example of like a modern cybercrime, where in an era where he's really looking ahead and what he's doing here, because we don't really have a good real life example via game medium to go off of. You could argue that a like event could have occurred on the internet as well, but not necessarily how it happened in SAO2 while VR diving. So I just really like the tales that this guy spins with his stories a lot of the time. It's a good sci-fi, and be it not for Kirito and like a completely different cast of characters, I'd still probably just be enjoyed by. I would just enjoy the story as it was, regardless of the characters, I think.
What about you,
Yeah.
Tyler?
What's up? No, I thought you went to Tripoli first. If Gun Gale Online had come first instead of Sword Art Online, I probably would not have enjoyed it as much. As it stands, it feels kind of weak in some respects. I remember there was one of the things I really enjoyed about the first Sword Art Online was that world had a great deal of diversity to it. By doing those side stories, first and foremost, they established a much larger connection to the world, got you involved in the characters, and it felt very fresh. It felt very interesting. It felt something you can get involved in. But this very straight narrative from once again putting his life at risk, diving into another game. At this point, it just feels kind of stretched out to me.
Tripoli?
Well, actually, I thought that the first 8 episodes felt a little bit stretched, could have been more compact, but I actually enjoyed them too. But the last episodes which were really great action-wise and story-wise. Really felt like a part of the first season. It's our first arc. It was kind of interesting in a way. That was the most enjoyable thing.
I think the
That
best
new.
episode for me was at the very end. I think it's the very end of like episode 5, is like finally shit hits the fan with it. You actually have Death Gun show up and actually talk to Kirito, and I think that was like a really cool ominous thing that actually made it feel like, okay, now we're gonna see some stuff. But you
Yes.
guys are right; it's pretty slow up until that point. But that's when you see it, you're like, yeah, like let's get, this is gonna rock now.
I saw a
And so-
lot of fan backlash against the fact that it felt like that they invented the story of this post-traumatic stress disorder that Kirito is suffering from in SAO. Did you get that perception?
No, I think that's right on the mark. I mean, because they talk about it even today with like the soldiers, like the Gulf War syndrome and all the PTSD
Well, for Kirito
stuff.
in that story, did it feel like an ass-pull story-wise? It felt like these.
No, I think he's managing it better than the other survivors. Like they don't really talk about, there's something like, what is it, several thousand survivors still out there, and within his tiny group, I mean, most of them were like lead people. They actually, found lives online, and I think that's helped them adjust better and deal with it better when they came back to the real world, because it wasn't so bad for them. Like, we don't know about the rest of the population, whether they're in group therapy or what. We do know that they had to do special schooling and everything if they were, in like work retrain programs. So they did mention that in some of the late series stuff in the OAVs when they actually got out of that world. But, you don't really see them. So I think a lot of that's justified. I don't really think it's an ass pull. I think, like, they're probably all suffering from it in some way, and that's probably what's driving them to dive back in to kind of justify, their personal existence from everything that they dealt with when they were actually in Sword Art. So you see them, they often pull that with the OAV in the side episodes. They're showing them they were in ALO, they're still interacting there. So I think that's kind of like their way of dealing with it.
Mm-hmm. I agree that it didn't feel like an ass pull to me. I just wanted to kind of confront some of the fan backlash, which a show like this overhype is going to probably get. And the other issue that I think I have with it is it might be able to be moved over, but this internal affairs department might really suck at their job, because if you have people who you can kind of more or less confirmed killed the red players from SAO, why are they free to go out and about?
That was kind of a gray area with it. I don't know if it's just because, like, that feign this, like they can do that whole where they can kind of feign like, oh, it was just a game thing, and then we had no way of knowing that we were actually, killing somebody in the real world. Like they can. I'm sure that there's some justifiable scrutiny, so they might be on the list somewhere, but it's one of those to keep our eye on you versus like we can't jail you because we can't necessarily see you actively having committed that crime in the real world.
Keep an eye out on him, because the kid that whose parents run a hospital, it's natural for him to just go get drugs anytime he wants to.
Very possible.
Yeah, I just go ahead.
Well, this guy that we're talking about is quite confusing. He's like a yandere, and we knew this from like episode 4 or 5, where he asks Sinon, well, if he had a chance, and yeah, she kind of said, well, if you let's don't think about that. We're just friends right now.
Yeah.
He was like, well, do I have a chance? Yeah. Yeah.
So I did want to mention one thing real quick. I don't know if it's just the animators or what was going on, but even with Sword Art Online, they put a really big emphasis on the butts.
Oh, that one episode was just, exposition and male gaze on the butt crack. That was all that was part. It was like, what am I watching again here?
But I mean, even on Sword Art Online, during some of the scenes, they'll show the female's butt just drawn like really nice, and like they put the whole emphasis just on drawing that butt versus everything else.
Yeah, you thought Rail Wars had fan service. No, we put it in Sword Art for you.
Mm-hmm.
But only in a space dandy kind of way,
Baby.
So, I did have to mention though, because I don't really watch opening endings too often, but I always did catch this ending because it just came out of nowhere, and it was actually catchy enough for me to get into at the beginning. So I hope that makes Nick happy.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still kind of a little bitter over like how this came out, and like in the opening before like they revealed what he was going to use as like a main arm weapon. You see him doing that like lightsaber dueling in the opening before he's done it.
Yeah.
And that's just like one of the things where they should have like recut that until that happened. Like that was a surprise, man. Like and they ruined it. Like just recut that little bit with some temporary footage, and then when you finally get the lightsaber, then pull that back out.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was expecting Credo to be more gun centric in this, and there was a lot of talk about it because this got delayed almost like 2 years before this actually came out. So his gun Gale Online, there was talks that he's going to be a chick now, which he's not, obviously. But then the very first episode, the very first theme song, they show him just like going like all mad cat with the lightsaber, and you're like, well, shit, what's the point?
Yeah. That was my weekly coverage on Metanor.net, and the only comment I could possibly have for him having that lightsaber was a link to Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where Chris Rock was saying, "I think Gorjuka's going to sue someone." That was the only comment I could really legitimately make for that.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next title. What do we have here? Calligraphy, right? Barakamon?
Yay!
Get out your brushes. I found my brush, actually.
I got a permanent marker.
Oh, that's as good as you can do.
Well,
I got
don't write in black ink.
I got a touch screen.
Is this where I get on my tablet and the stylus?
Sure.
So, Sean, you want to start us off?
No, not really. Really, really good show, though. Really good. And I guess what made it interesting for me is that it wasn't a traditional activity kind of anime, but instead of being about calligraphy, it was about being an artist. And it was about an artist struggling to sort of become someone who, from being technically proficient, like this calligrapher was really good, but only he was very, very traditional. And the series starts. I don't know. I don't know how much I want to explain because I feel like I already did this last time.
Yeah.
But yeah, it continued along that vein. It followed his artistic development, and by being exiled to this kind of remote Japanese island, and which is very much outside of his experience because he comes from Tokyo. He eventually discovers that he's finding so much artistic inspiration from this place, and through that he's able to develop a new experimental style. He's experimenting with different kinds of calligraphy and techniques and that sort of thing. And so the ending of the show is actually pretty interesting because he then goes back to Tokyo and has to produce calligraphy, and he realizes that it's really being at that island that made him that gave him inspiration to create different and interesting works. But when he goes back to Tokyo, he finds himself sort of reverting to his old, like, super traditional, like, school book style of calligraphy, which was an utter shock to him. And it wasn't until he was able to dial up, like, all of his friends on the island for, like, a big group call, and then they all, like, yell at him and sort of say encouraging things to him, then he was able to get his motivation back. He was able to find some inspiration. But yeah, sorry, I'm just going off on a weird tangent. Someone else can...
I mean, I absolutely stuck with it for the same reason I initially watched it, and that was because you know, having a younger character as like a protagonist is not super common in a lot of animations. I did mention last time that OreAni was one of the earlier series that I came across personally that kind of messed with, you know, an older protagonist with a younger female protagonist, and that's ultimately what I really watched Barakamon for. Not to say that I'm not into calligraphy at all, just that it wasn't my investment in the series, and I can respect like artist struggles, but I just kind of liked seeing how he developed with, you know, more country-esque characters and just seeing their personalities kind of breed through and imprint a little bit on him. I was in it for the interactions, and it is a decent series in that respect.
Yeah, and I guess another way that the countryside brought him out of his element is that he was surrounded by kids. And we don't know too much about his Tokyo life, but you know, presumably he's just surrounded by like other calligraphy professionals and like really old people, judges and curators and that sort of thing. And then he goes to the island, he's just confronted with just gobs of children, you know, who all find him fascinating. And you know, he even ends up teaching calligraphy to a couple of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I have to say. Went off on another weird
Oh
tangent.
my god, yeah, not so much of a spoiler or anything, but some hidden surprise that I had from this series was, while I loved the island interactions, and like near the end, one of the episodes introduced his mother and father character, and I was so absorbed into, I guess, the mother and father's characters and interactions in that series. I appreciated his Tokyo life in that aspect of just his mother was a crazy character, and I love the series even more because of it.
Yeah, she was pretty intense.
Hey, you like clingy older women? Is this what we're talking about here? Yeah, kind of clingy things like that. It was a great show because, you know, that was a portrait of an artist as a young arsehole when you get right down to it. This is a guy that's, you know, even though he has a refined sense of calligraphy, he's incredibly rough around the edges. He has, you know, like Sean says, he goes from this world to where he only operates as he's expected to with other calligraphy students. Probably didn't even have much interaction with kids his own age. And then, like you said, older people, curators, judges, and different things like that. So he's always acted as expected. And so here on the island, he gets taken completely off those rails, and there's no safety net for him to react to. He just has to be just like any one of us would be, and just to overreact to everything, as if this cannot possibly be happening to me. You know, having to, you know, turn a crank and start the fluid to get your bath going, which is, you know, a very simple activity. You just turn on the hot water tap, or you just leave the cover on the bath and let it go. So, you know, seeing that be part of also what has to be a daily creative life as well, of being able to take inspiration where you find it, and then, you know, be prepared. Because there are probably dozens of things that have happened to him on his island life that could have given him inspiration. It's just that he wasn't quite prepared to see it yet. I guess he has to fall down a cliff, being frightened by a little caterpillar, to be able to be truly inspired in that regard. So at the end of it, probably one of my favorite shows this season. It was a pleasure to cover it every week.
Yeah, and it was really fantastically well made. Like the animation was usually pretty nice. The character designs, even has a cool look to it.
Mm-hmm. Plus, there was a lot of people who at the very beginning who thought, "Holy crap, that Naru is a neat character," but man, that's a little bit too much character. And so, those moments to where they had interactions with her and interactions with the kids, they kind of dialed that down a bit and kept it a bit more realistic, rather than having it to be the only selling point that they could have. Oh, Naru is crazy because she's Naru. Let's do more of that.
Hmm.
They didn't do. They went the opposite direction. They didn't do that.
Yeah, it was pretty well balanced. Like I didn't. Yeah, what could I say? Like I can't really find any fault in this show. I'm also surprised just something with the subject matter that it does have had such nice production values.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, so there you go.
There you go, Jack. You happy?
Flawless anime. We have nothing to talk about. Nothing.
Hey, another good point that it had was it had an English closing, so all the more reason for me to like it. I can understand its closing without subtitles.
Yeah, opening and ending, it's pretty good. Music by Kenji Kawai. The BGM was suitable.
Mm.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next title we got here, which is Akame ga Kill. Is this show complete or?
I think we got one more episode. I'm certain we have one more episode.
It's a 2-core, actually.
Oh,
I thought it
Yeah,
only
but-
went to... Oh, okay.
No, there's already announcements for a season 2, so.
I thought it was only a 14 this time around, but it might be going straight through.
The last time I looked on Mallet, it said 26 episodes.
Gotcha. I believe it. I know it's not over after 12.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually surprised a little bit that, it feels very shonen, at least the animation style and the way the characters are drawn. But then they don't really pull any punches. I mean, like the main character, I think is like only a few episodes in, he's just like totally slashing a guy in half, and you're like, well, damn, like he shows up in these almost. I guess colonial, a little bit more barbaric times, very European influence to it, and he's essentially wearing what equates to a guy in a like a school uniform for high school. He's wearing like the sweater vest with the collared shirt and pants, and you're like, well, he's just on his way to school. Why does he have those gauntlets and sword? It's a fun series. There's some cool abilities to it, and I tell you what, Lady as Death. I want to see more of her.
That's something. Yeah, I do appreciate this show's action, and I was making some early calls with it, wondering where it was going, and I didn't quite hit the nail on the head quite yet, and I don't think I will with it, which kind of makes me a little bit happy. But something that I did actually kind of notice was like I said, those undertones of very, very light, almost like elementary level, like Guroism. Like chopping people in half and kind of showing some entrails and monsters in half and just putting people through torture. They don't go intensively into it, but this is kind of like one of the series where I just didn't expect it to show up as much as it did. Not that it's like overabundant or enough to like someone would notice and be like, this is some pretty dark stuff. But
it's almost refreshing that it doesn't really pull any punches. Like I said, it's like I said, it feels very shonen-y. Like you almost think this is gonna be like kind of a different angle for like a very Monster Hunter type of thing where it'd be safe for like an 8-year-old to watch. But then all of a sudden, like we said, the blood and entrails start flowing. It's like, well, well, shit. You know, like that's different.
Yeah.
Um, there's some cool bits with the beast. I really like Mine. I wanted to call her Mine because of how it's spelled Mine, and I'm like, oh come on, that can't be just like mine, like Thessaly, but actually it is. She's cool. Shield was a little bit of a door frame, or just like a wallflower bit, but she was cool in her own way too. The characters do have some compelling uniqueness to them, so it's easy to find a favorite and go with the flow on this one.
Yeah, I also find an intense interest to what, like, as we all know, if we didn't explain it in the first, like, kind of synopsis summary that we usually do in the first bit, the relics in this series were, this show is kind of set in a realm where an emperor went around and got, like, all of the mythic equipment, all, mythic beasts, dragons, whatnot, and had them slayed, and gathered all the highest talent he could to design weapons. So, a lot of the mythical creatures are kind of now gone, and he pretty much just tempered out these things called relics, which have these really quirky one-off abilities, and that's actually kind of like a point of interest for me in this show, is almost a little reminiscent of that, like, Nanana's buried treasure. I just kind of wonder what these things are going to be doing, and a lot of times it's like a really straightforward kind of shonen-y, shout your move kind of style relic, but I do kind of have a little bit of an interest in seeing the diversity that kind of does show up. So.
Yeah, because they start out with like kind of more of the traditional, like, oh, this is my power armor thing, and I can pull a spear out, or like one of them apparently was just the super cannon, but like the quirk with it, and it's kind of unique, is it was actually Mine's weapon. Is she was like, well, yeah, the bigger pinch that I'm in basically is like, if she's in a rock and a hard spot, that apparently makes the weapon more powerful, and the worse that situation is for her, apparently that drastically improves the performance. So you see her like throughout the series, she, they do like the shonen bit where she just like shoots the main character, and you're like, you know it's not going to kill him, but it's, like, it'll hurt him pretty bad. But then she gets into a seriously bad situation, and it's literally nuke from orbit sort of power that comes out of the thing, and a lot of those little quirks like that, and they're kind of funky looking too. I think one of the bad guys shows up. He's got this weird like third eye headpiece, and you kind of know it's to like read opponents' moves, but it has its own set of unusual traits to it, and they're even saying that nobody can just wear this armor. Apparently, it has to align with like your character and spirit before you can even like use it even moderately well. Otherwise, it just sucks your energy away after one use, and you just fall over.
Yeah, and I do like the basic characterization it does like kind of go through. If you watch the first episode, you know that this series is going to be kind of rife with characters passing, and I've kind of liked the perspective that they play on a lot of the characters as they pass. They, it's not treated too lightheartedly. They usually go in a fairly dramatic way. So there is a couple of angles of fun to be had with this series. I find it kind of weird how the title, Akame ga Kill, is literally talking about one of the assassins who is not the main character. I kind of wonder how it got that title.
Yeah, you sit there, you think like, okay, she's going to be like the main love interest or something, and it's going to be like they're going to really dig into her backstory, and they kind of do a little bit, but it's nowhere near to the degree that I was expecting. It sounds like you weren't expecting that either, where it's like, oh yeah, in the past she did this, and she had her sister, and it was very typical, like I broke away from the main group sort of thing, and that's it. Like that's all you really hear about it. I feel like it's me and you, like the only people that have seen this one.
Well,
Potentially, I can check the
But
list.
I think true. I haven't seen it.
I've
Oh.
seen it, and but I'm not that, let's say, on a good state with this anime.
It says you're a 1. That means you should be current, right?
I
Yeah.
watched all the way up to like episode 10 or 11 or so, and the only reason that got me into watching it was that they showed that a female character, and I was like, ooh, who's she? So I decided to watch up to that point to see who she was, and once that kind of passed, I was like, okay, I might watch it again later on, make another like batch watch. But until someone actually points out something really cool, I don't know if I would continue watching this.
Yeah, I don't know
Plenty
if
of
you
other
watched
action
the
series.
I don't know if you watched the interactions with Esteth yet, but that's some pretty comical stuff. When Esteth gets involved and her interactions with the main protagonist, the comedy definitely starts one-upping a notch a little bit, or just situational humor, not so much comedy.
Yeah. It's funny because her impression of me is, or my impression of her, is that she is one of those types that you're like, man, I wish she was on my side, but she's not, and she's really hardcore not on her side. So, and you know, I think everybody at this point has seen her. She has this very pseudo Nazi-esque get up with the Zettai Ryoki going and the open blouse with the tits and the tattoo on her chest, and let's just say this: she's showing more cleavage than all of Rail Wars was. So she's definitely the hot pseudo antagonist that you're like, okay, which direction is she gonna go? Because she announces one of the key things, I guess, is it's not really a spoiler because she announces it almost right away after she kind of shows up, is she's like, oh, I'm this very prolific general for the Empire, but you know what? I think I should pursue some romance now. It's just like out of the blue, and everybody's like, okay, you know, and so she starts looking for a date, and that's where a lot of the situational humor starts coming up for it.
Well, actually, I think about the show, it's over dramatic, but I don't feel anything for the characters at all. It's like this character dies, and oh, well, that's okay. I don't think it's bad. And everyone in the show, oh my God, he died, he was killed. Let's avenge him. And then, well, no, we can't do that because they're too powerful. And I'm like, yeah, decide for something, or yeah, it doesn't just doesn't feel like, well, the death was worth it or anything.
I heard a lot of people like saying in posts and everything. They're like, "Oh, this is the edgiest series of the year." I'm like, what are you watching?
Yeah.
I mean, after Al Noah Zero and Zankyou no Terror, they think this is edgy. You know, I was sitting there watching. I'm like, yeah, this is a fun series to watch. It's action shonen-y, and it's got a little you know, love comedy mixed in there. But you know, I'm like, it's a good blend. You know, this is not bad. This is not like the best of the show, but it's certainly not bad in any way. It's very watchable and enjoyable. I like it a lot.
That's what I'm thinking too. I've got my problems with the show, but either way, I'm watching it. So it's like, well, the show is bad. Well, let's watch this. And
Yeah. So this show seems to me like one of those shows that certain groups of people are definitely going to watch. Like if you're into, what is it, maybe Naruto, Bleach and stuff, this is one of those shows that you're going to definitely, I think, pick up this show and kind of enjoy it.
It definitely has a very high shonen vibe to it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
but
Pretty much checks off all those boxes. With very powerful main
But it's
characters.
like
and
so
supporting
gimmicky that I couldn't liken it to like say Bleach or Naruto. But I would agree that the fans of those nature would probably easily identify and like this series.
And it certainly had its fair share of bloodlust going throughout it.
Yeah.
But the only thing I can really fault it for, because is that evil empire is evil for the lulz just seems a bit too weak.
It is. They don't even really they just the emperor's a bad guy, and between him and the whatever the governor or liaison or whatever,
Yeah.
it's like
Like
they have this terrible control over the city, and you don't really see that outside of their little like encounters like throughout the city. You're like, oh, this is just, but maybe that's why they have such great control over it is they don't press them too hard, and then the people who raise the stink they just squash under their thumb.
yeah, well, it felt like that, but it felt like, oh, here's a crucifixion. Why is there crucifixions happening? Well, it's Monday. I mean, that's
That's when the crucifixions happen, don't you know?
we got a schedule. I mean, if crucifixions are bored to you, hang out till Tuesday. We'll have drawing.
Kind of like the Monty Python walking through the streets. Bring out you dead. I'm not dead yet. Donk.
Punk. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the corruption, that's all that you're really precursed with, is the characters our main protagonist was, like, forewarned that there are some really corrupt people who much like Skeletor, are just corrupt because that's who they are. That's what they identified as. They are corrupt because that's them. They shall be corrupted and do corrupt stuff.
I mean, look at me. I have a skull for a face. What else do you expect from me?
There is a lot of that, and on that note, I'm like, you know what, the corruption in Hitsugi no Chaika, the coffin prison, the corruption there was more legit than the corruption here. It's like there's some bad guys doing some bad things, but they're over there. We'll go kill them later. And then in Chaika, it's like, yeah, we're genuinely corrupt. We got our hands on some power here. It's like, okay, I buy you guys, but what's this business with this little, little king schmuck or whatever he's doing? Like, why should I be compelled to sympathize with the main character on this?
Yeah.
all right. So we're about at our 2-hour mark. So we're gonna call it a night today.
Aw, we haven't even talked about Mahoka yet.
Yeah.
You want to do just one more and
Gravy. If we talk about Mahoka, that will be all night. You can pick a short one.
We gotta save
Well,
some-
you guys will talk about it. I gave up after half an episode, so
Aww.
We gotta save something for next week.
You didn't like Sasugo Nisama, Destroyer of Worlds?
It
Saving
just
something.
We gotta save something. We've only gotten through like 8 titles. Like a list of 30. We've got stuff
we're
saved.
shorty.
We've got
One
60
little
deals.
Yeah, but we're only gonna cover about 30.
Yeah,
Come on,
We might as well just make this a weekly discussion, like wrapping up the previous season, because there's so many things that we
I
have
think
to
we
talk
got through a
about.
lot of the better ones today, and the better ones will run on for a while. And then when you get to the more median, average, below subpar series, it's like you spend like 3 minutes on that thing and you move on.
Okay.
All right. Well,
See,
let's
but I
do some-
wouldn't agree with that at all, because Mahoka I could talk about for hours.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Mahoka is not a below average series.
No,
I'm
it's
talking
a
below
good one.
average. Like,
We're already talking about it now, and we're not officially talking about
I'm
it
pretty
now.
sure
Still
I'm pretty sure
technically
we're
on
not going to
Comic.co.
debate Rurumo. I'm sure we're not going to debate Hana Yamada. I'm sure we're not going to debate Glass Lips, Saba Gebu, Captain Earth. We're
Let's
just not
do
going
the
to have that
survival
discussion.
game one. That's a fun
Now,
one.
now, if we do Tokyo Ghoul, we might get disgusting unless we just have a unanimous vote on that. But
Hey, I'll pick a fight with someone over Rurumo. If that's what it takes.
well, you have to instigate the fight because I don't know if there's anything.
That show was
you know
All
what?
worthy on that show.
You know what? I think we should save that one for later. Why don't we do a quick wrap up on the spring leftovers? I know a couple of us were following Captain Earth. We could probably do a quick one on that.
Yep.
Or even doing like the survival game one, was it Savagebu? I mean, that's a quick one. I think Nick, me, Tyler, we could discuss that one real quick and cap it off.
Which one?
Baby steps.
Savagegu or Captain of Earth.
God, the most brain damaged television program ever.
Yes, it was.
Oh, God, it's just no sympathy whatsoever.
Actually, it's not the most brain dead thing this season, but it's close.
Brain damaged.
Oh, whatever.
Brain dead. There's no activity. The EKG is a flat line. This one was the EKG was all over the damn place.
I had fun watching it. I think we can discuss that one for.
Okay, we're so far into it already. We're bumping Savagebu up. Let's go.
This was a show where the main character shot both.
All right, guys, we're ending. I'm sorry. 2 hours.
No.
So,
Bastard.
we'll continue this next week. We'll have plenty of time. So.
Oh, I was muted. I wasn't even talking.
That's our punishment.
I wasn't even talking at the time.
So
I was
let's
looking at the list.
Tank's getting out the riding crop.
Thank you guys for watching, our viewers. We still have quite a few titles as these guys we're all discussing. We'll be discussing next week. If you want to join us, we post our events on Google+, our community anime talk. Pretty simple. It's one of the only communities I've seen that actually talks about anime, not just posting a bunch of pictures.
Yeah.
There is one other one that's been doing stuff recently.
Sean has a cat.
So feel free to join us at Anime Talk, and that's it for tonight. Thank you guys.
Goodbye.